SSC Editorial Important Dictations for SSC Skill Test Part 1 Day 1 5 seconds. The Center's insistence based on new universities grant commission guidelines that final year examinations in all universities and institutions be held in spite of the risk posed by COVID 19 is a needless complication in the national pandemic response. To expect large numbers of students to take a pen and paper test or an online examination or a combination of the two as suggested by the University Grants Commission is counterproductive. There is growing concern worldwide that the coronavirus infection is not always mild among young people, and more importantly, youth with mild symptoms might pass it on to older family members who could become seriously ill. The point, therefore, is not that the center is legally empowered to order the conduct of examinations by September end, because higher education is in the concurrent list, but the likely harm that might follow. Always also in the unlock phase, states have been empowered to add restrictions to the Home Ministry's orders on public activity, taking the local situation into account. Many large universities have shown commendable LRCT in devising alternatives to evaluate students in the present circumstances, including some academically rigorous technical universities. They have done away with a final examination and chosen a formula that uses best past performance of students. Given the incalculable risks involved, states such as Punjab, Maharashtra, Orissa, West Bengal, and later Delhi decided against holding final year examinations. As the country with the third highest number of cases in the world, more than 1 million till now, the situation of COVID 19 in India is worrying. Any move to ram through a final examination scheme could endanger lives. The center must take its own advice of restricting public movement and gatherings during the pandemic seriously and leave it to the states of determine the best course. In its defense, the Department of Higher Education has gathered data to show that 454 out of 640 universities had either conducted examinations or planned to do so, and the rest should fall in line because of the legal position. Such a hard line approach does not cohere with the imperative of a consensus pandemic response. It is relevant to point out that in the most affected nation, the US, major universities are placing health and safety first and academic enterprise next. Any decision to reopen institutions and conduct examinations requires careful assessment of local conditions and is best left to the states. The course of the COVID 19 pandemic remains far from predictable, posing for the central government the dilemma of salvaging part of the school academic year while avoiding a fresh wave of infections. The school reopening question has not been resolved satisfactorily in other parts of the world, and the measures by many countries have been experimental, yet policymakers are aware of severe impacts to the education process and the losses to students. The alternative of remote and online learning opportunities is skewed by economic status and geography. In India, the many divides digital, rural, urban, and rich poor have painfully come to the fore between regions and even within states. There are instances of children left behind without computer access, internet connectivity, TV sets, and even electricity. The issue of reopening schools in a calibrated manner must therefore be addressed soon. It is understandable that in the present confused situation, 21 out of 36 states and union territories, including worst affected Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, have not taken a view yet on when to permit direct classes. States have also been asked to ascertain the opinion of parents on this issue, although it is unclear how they can do this in the short window given to them. Among the center's responses to the problem initiated through organizations such as the Central Board of Secondary Education is a reduction of the syllabus load for class 9 to 12 by 30%, although this ostensibly supportive decision has become controversial for its choice of topics for removal: democratic rights, federalism, citizenship, and secularism, to name a few. There is discernible trend of diminishing basic rights as a necessary sacrifice to fight the pandemic, but impoverishing the syllabus on these topics can only stunt social development. Such decisions should be vetted by academic experts and not imposed by bureaucratic fiat. More fundamentally, if lessons are to be drawn from around the world on a back to school plan, a just released large scale study from South Korea would be useful. Research findings from that country, which worked hard to contain the pandemic early, show that older children between 10 to 19 transmit the virus as much as adults do. The findings have been acknowledged by public health institutions in the US as valuable and offer a cautionary pointer to community spread among adults and vulnerable groups from older students. On the other hand, the European experience, instanced by Denmark as far back as April, is that containment in the community has to precede school reopening. The question is much more complex for India as a society that has severe inequities and where students live in multi generational homes. Clearly, no early date can be set for a full reopening, and protocols on class size, distancing, ventilation of rooms, face coverings, and even open air classes need to be evolved. Meanwhile, developing remote education for measurable outcomes should be pursued actively since future disruptions cannot be ruled out. The last thing that India's pandemic hit economy needs is accelerating inflation. And yet, that is precisely what the latest data point to. June's retail inflation reading of 6% is worrying, particularly since It was the first month when the economy reopened from the crippling lockdowns of the preceding 2 months. While the disruptions caused to the supply of goods and services as a result of the nationwide shutdown can, to an extent, explain the acceleration in price gains. That this happened despite depressed demand is cause for disquiet. A closer look at the Consumer Price Index reveals that prices in the food and beverages group rose an average 7% per year on year, with the key protein sources. Stop. स्क्रीनशॉट्स मिल जाएंगे व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप एंड टेलीग्राम में.